we're going to go get started here. We're going to go get started. So thank you for coming to the Operation Public Safety Committee meeting tonight. Today is Tuesday, October 4th. Roll call, please.
Thank you. Council President Boyce.
Here.
Councilmember Fincher.
Here.
Councilmember Kaur. Councilmember Larmer.
Here.
Councilmember Michaud.
Here.
Councilmember Thomas.
Here.
Councilmember Troutner.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. We have 5 items on our agenda tonight, so we're going to get started here. First is the agenda approval. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Let the record show the agenda passed. We're going to move on to item number 4, business. The first is going to be approval of the minutes from September 20th.
Mr. President, I would move for approval of minutes for September 20th.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. We're going to move on to item number 4B, which is ordinance to repeal and replace Chapter 8.09 of the Kent City Code with a new chapter entitled Camping on Public Property. We have our COA here, right? CAO, excuse me. I want to give you a new title, right? Here, Pat Fitzpatrick to kick this off for us. Pat?
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, Council. We're here to talk about and present to you an ordinance regarding camping. And we're going to have a bit of a long presentation for you tonight because of the detail involved here. So to start off, I just want to explain why we're here. Staff is asking Council to adopt amendments to its current camping ordinance. The City of Kent has had a camping ordinance for many, many years, and we are seeking your support to amend the ordinance to make it more useful and more targeted to certain issues that we are facing currently. I'm going to start out the presentation by providing you an introduction of why we're here and what we're facing, and then we're going to have a team of a few people come up and present other portions of this issue to you for your consideration. We'll have Human Services and the police to provide an explanation of what they do. We have a video that shows what they do. We'll then have one of our attorneys come up and describe to you what the changes in the ordinance are, how it's structured, and what the new law would do. And ultimately, we're proposing that the ordinance be placed on the October 18th consent agenda. And once I'm done with the presentation, we're going to have staff. You'll notice that a lot of our staff members who deal with this issue are in the audience. They're the experts here, and they will be available if you all have questions for them. So Kent has a camping ordinance. It's been in effect since 2000. And we have, in the past, used the camping ordinance for leverage for individuals who are camping to find alternative shelter. That is the purpose of our ordinance. We have paused strict enforcement of the ordinance. You have heard me talk to you many times about case law that has changed over time. And so in light of that case law, we paused formal enforcement of our ordinance. Of course, COVID-19 changed things as well, and we're coming out of COVID-19, so we're back into a situation where we feel we need to utilize the ordinance to help us with this issue. And so that's why we're here. We're ready to establish this tool again, make it more effective, and we'll talk about what effectiveness means with you as we go through this presentation. So what we are seeing is camping complaints rise. They have been rising over the months, many months. And I can tell you, since moving into the mayor's office, this is bar none the most common complaint we receive in that office. We get phone calls almost on a daily basis about this issue. A lot of the issue has to do with camping in areas that are designated for another public purpose. the investments that you all have decided are important for this city and our inability to provide them to the public for that use. And so that's we need a tool to help us move back into using spaces for what their intended use is. There's a number of reasons we believe we're seeing the camping complaints increase. There is no doubt there is a drug epidemic. This city has been part of the opioid lawsuit, as have many cities. I think the Attorney General yesterday announced settlement of a case. So we've invested money on the corporate side of this issue. But the fact is there is the criminal side of this issue as well, where it's possible that corporate prescribed drugs might have started the epidemic. It's now fed by illegal drugs. Fentanyl, of course, is in the news almost every day. And methamphetamine has made a strong comeback. And that drug is more powerful than it ever was before. In combination, at that same time, we had a decision in our Supreme Court which made unlawful or determined that our drug possession charges were unconstitutional. And the Blake fix, as it's referred to, makes it almost impossible for the police to enforce drug possession laws. And what you have now is a society that is not a society, I'm sorry, but we have in the state of Washington an environment where we are flooded with drugs and we have very little leverage to enforce drug charges. And what is happening is there's a regional acceptance of drug use going on in our region. And it's making it very difficult and in our opinion is significantly impacting the scope of the issue we're dealing with. Our camping case reports, you'll see from the case reports that have been taken over the last years, you can see a stark increase this year. I suspect that 2021 was a COVID issue. But the numbers prove out that our cases are rising substantially, and they're for various reasons, and we're kind of at a breaking point, honestly. One thing I want to note is I'm here because this issue, usually the CAO doesn't present an ordinance, right? I don't know that it's ever happened, but I'm here because we have almost every department in our city impacted, and we just couldn't decide who owns this problem. It's a citywide issue. It crosses almost every department that we have in our city. From our Parks Department, our Public Works Department, especially on the environmental side, from our Human Services Department. It's a problem of, it spreads out all over the city functioning. The people out in that audience are people that you deal with on a regular basis. They lead up the committees. They're professionals. They know what they're doing. I can tell you that staff has been meeting about this issue for many, many months. And we have, over the past couple months, really drilled down on this issue to find out, to figure out what the best tools would be to have an effect and affect change. So our staff members, they care about this city, they care about their work, and they care about the community and the people in it. And they care about people who are living in camps. And I want that to be clear. This isn't the city coming down and trying to stamp out a problem. It's trying to address the problem. And we feel that what we're going to present to you tonight gives us a tool, not all tools, but a tool to develop some leverage to maybe get people help that they can't get themselves because of an addiction issue or a mental health issue. So that's really what we're looking to do today. We believe that this is compassion. And I know a lot of people will say it's not compassionate to do what we're doing, but we believe when you hear and we finish this presentation, this is the tough parent approach to this problem. And we're trying to establish a tool that will be useful. There's a couple things I want to clarify too. There's been a lot of news coverage on this issue. You've probably seen some of it. I have seen at least 2 different channels talk about this issue in a very fair way, but both of them have shown video of situations that are not Kent situations. The most common one being an area south of Kent, not within Kent city limits. And I think it's important for you all to understand, and I think you know this, we have no authority to affect anything that happens outside of the city limits of Kent. It's not our jurisdiction. You have no authority to do anything about that. So that's the first thing. And another thing that we are challenged with, and we as staff, we struggle with, is the headline that says, City of Kent can't crack down. And that's not happening. We're not engaging in that kind of enforcement. We're not cracking down. We are establishing another tool that our staff can use so that we can utilize spaces for their intended purpose and also hopefully create a situation where people are encouraged and actually pushed sometimes into getting help they need. And that's why we are here. That's why staff is here, and we'll be able to answer your questions. All right, so I'm just going to go through this as quick as I can because I think you might have a lot of questions. We have a video for you to watch that shows our officers out in the field doing their work and our human services as well. We invest a significant amount of resources in the city in 3 specific areas that were really are affected by this. For those of you on the Public Works Committee, you know how much money and resources we put into our environmental protection, right? We've talked about Mill Creek, and Mill Creek runs through a park that you have spent $970,000 to clean up homeless camps. We have invested millions of dollars in wellhead protection programs and protecting our water sources. And those are areas that are specifically being put at risk with garbage and human waste and drug waste and removing foliage and those sort of things. So you'll see some provisions in our ordinance that specifically target that kind of behavior. Our parks, facilities, and programs. You've heard Julie Pariscondola talk to you about how parks are an equity neutralizer. Our programs, we provide low-cost programs for kids who want to engage in our programs. Our staff has to spend a lot of extra time creating a safe environment now because sometimes when they show up for a camp at a park, they're dealing with campers in the area. They have to go through and sweep the area. We've all heard the story about Tacoma Parks where a child ate a fentanyl pill they found on the ground. That heightens our concern. It creates additional work, and it creates a situation where we have to take extra action to protect the public for putting on those programs that you have decided are very important for our community. And then, of course, we have economic investments. I think there are a few business owners out here who are very concerned about the economic environment that this issue has been affecting. You have had people come to your council meetings and say some pretty inappropriate words because they're so upset about the issues. We have business owners that are considering, are trying to get permits to put electric fences around their buildings. And so we're in a situation where we have to, as staff, we have to do something to bring this issue around. And so we're coming before you to provide you with something that we believe is compassionate. And the way we will enforce it will be with compassion. Next slide, please. So I just want to real quick go over I think the environmental issues are obvious. We are required to follow federal, state, and local regulations to protect our natural resources. We maintain our creeks and rivers, shorelines, wetlands, our water retention ponds, et cetera. I think about 4 years ago was the first time I heard it when we had Public Works presentation to the committee talk about how they are concerned when they're line trimming a wetland area and there's needles laying around. They're afraid they're going to throw a needle somewhere. And, I thought about that and I thought, And then I went out with some of these, with some of our groups and went to some of these camps and looked at some of our areas, and it's a real thing. I mean, it is a dangerous situation that they have to deal with. We invest a significant amount of money in the NPDES requirements, water runoff. We're talking about trying to dredge and rechannel to some degree the Mill Creek. This is millions of dollars of investment, incredible number of hours that we have to go through. We're working with tribes. We're trying to improve salmon habitat. And we have people who are depositing needles in shorelines and drug wrappers in our shorelines. This is a real thing. Public Works, they've had to shift resources from maintenance, from general maintenance of our infrastructure to cleaning up camps. We have people here who a lot of their job now is targeted at the next camp cleanup. So we're diverting a lot of our resources to this issue. Next slide, please. Parks, another big area of impact. We have both park facilities and we have active and passive programs. It wasn't long ago that you heard people in the surrounding the Mill Creek Canyon Park coming here on a nightly basis about the issues in that park. We have, like I said, we spent $970 some odd thousand to clean it up, and we're doing pretty good. And now we're in the next phase, which is to create and activate that park so the community has a place to recreate. And this is an important park, and it's a really good example of why this is important. A lot of people in our community can't put their hiking boots on, get in their car, and go up into the Cascade Mountains and hike a trail. They just don't have the resources to do that. But they might have the ability to walk over to Mill Creek and in their tennis shoes go for a walk. But they won't because they're afraid. And so that's important for us from an equity standpoint, as is all of our programs that we provide to the public. We have, again, in this department, a significant amount of budgeted funds, a significant amount of staff time working to clean these parks up. And that's all taken away from programming. It's taken away from resources that we can spend on a new park in a new community that's underserved by a park. So this is really important stuff. Next slide, please. Parks, you know, Julie Paris-Gondola's crew is really good at doing surveys. And here's some survey information. I do want to qualify this and say that the answers aren't followed by because of camping, but they are often related to that. And you'll see, you know, safety in parks is of critical importance. And safety on trails, critical importance. And 67% surveyed dissatisfied with safety on trails. I don't think that's because there's slippery rocks. So I think that this is an issue. We are proud of our parks program. And this is one of those issues we feel like we need to make a better effort of providing those park environments to our community. Next slide, please. Thank you. And then there's the economic investments. I meet with the KDP Gala on a monthly basis, and pretty much I can guarantee you the first issue we're going to talk about is camping and the crime issues going on in the downtown core area. And so this is an issue that is really important to the city. If we can't provide a safe environment for businesses, we are going to lose our businesses. And I don't think I have to say any more of that. You've had people stream into this room talking to you about how upset they are about the problem, how it's affecting their ability to conduct business and maintain their business. We have business owners that are being required to invest a significant amount of money in the safety of their employees, the safety of their customers, and the well-being of their businesses. So next slide, please. Staff safety. As the Chief Administrative Officer, I think it's my responsibility to ensure staff has a working environment that is safe. We have a situation now where we used to be able to send staff out alone to do their job, and we can't anymore in a lot of situations, so we have to double up. And that obviously takes resources from doing other parts of that job. It cuts their work basically in half when we have to do that. We have people who leave buildings late at night, who come to work sometimes at the golf complex to find that things have been broken. And while we can't always attribute that directly to camping, it often, I don't think we can say that it's often not related. We are asking staff to handle a ever-increasing quantity of dangerous materials, be it drug paraphernalia, needles, human waste, hazardous chemicals, things that you would never have imagined doing as a park employee when you got your job 15 years ago. The other thing that we've experienced lately is we have contractors coming into our sites to do work. I think 2 weeks ago we had a situation where we had individuals throwing rocks at contractors, so they had to stop. And when that happens, we're in a situation where we could be have liability for contract delays. If we delay this job and it delays another job, we might be exposing ourselves to potential legal liability. It also raises the cost of contracting for us, so it hits us there too. So in general, we're dealing with some significant quality of life issues. I know that litter on the streets and in our parking lots and whatnot has been a significant issue for some members of council for some time. This problem prevents our staff from addressing those problems because they're in the parks cleaning up those camps. We have we've seen a significant amount of increase in property crime, and our officers would tell you that when they go into camps, they find a lot of property in those camps that probably came from somebody's backyard. It's just a matter of fact. It's a tough conversation to have, but that's what they're seeing out there. And then we also have violent crime within camps. We've had a lot of issues come up within camps that is unacceptable. There's quality of life issues. It creates safety concerns for the general public. It impacts our residential neighborhoods. And in general, it can create an environment where people lose interest in caring for their community at all. And then there's the business threat that we talked about. There's some businesses in the area are constantly having to clean up their property. They're having to add private security costs. And again, I want to stress, not 100% of that is attributed to the camping issue, but a lot of it certainly is. And the police department will tell you that when they find a large concentration in a camp, they can generally see a spike in property-related crime. I think the issue that you guys were pinged with this weekend is just the absolute perfect example of something, of the type of issue we deal with. You see a couple pictures from McSorley Creek. That area last week, the city started a cleanup. We hired a contractor to go out there and do the cleanup. Very important to get that cleaned up now because it's the dry season, because after the dry season, we will not be able to get equipment in there. It means everything has to be cleaned up manually, which drives up the cost significantly, and that's why we're doing that now. It's probably the only time we're fortunate to have this dry of a season in Washington. But you had emails from individuals responsible for this camp right here. And they were asking to be allowed to stay. In an email that they sent only to the mayor, they indicated that if we let them stay, they would be stewards of the forest. It was then that I realized, and I confirmed this with our officers, that this was the camp that they were occupying. They were offered shelter, and they refused. They did end up getting, apparently, were able to move into their parents' house in Federal Way. Next slide, please. Here's the important thing about this, and this really drives this point home. The McSorley Creek area is the start of McSorley Creek, which ends up in the Puget Sound. And Wyra 9 has a project with a $21 million investment to improve that creek as it enters Puget Sound for salmon habitat and other near-shore habitat. And that's a perfect example of why we need to keep these areas clean and free of camps. Next slide, please. So we believe that the ordinance that we present to you will help us achieve the mission, vision, and values. And one of those values is that we care about people. And we care about not only our business community and the person who lives in a house, but we care about people who are living in camps. We do. Our Human Services Department shows that. Our officers who respond to this issue and our whole team, which is 2 people right now, they will tell you and they will show you how they deal with these people with compassion. We do not expect many criminal filings to come from this. I can tell you right now, we don't have the ability to fill up our jail with people who are camping, and we have no intent to do so. But if we don't have that threat, we won't ever be able to get that last final push somebody needs. And I was talking to one of the council members today about the fact that people in this situation often need 4, 5, 6, 10 pushes to finally make that decision to change. Sometimes they have to reach absolute rock bottom before they're willing to make that change. And nobody can make that change for them but them. We can't charge people our way out of this problem. We know that. But we also know that if we don't have any leverage, we're never going to be able to be like a parent is to their child and try to convince them that what they're doing is wrong and that the behavior needs to change. Since 2000, we've filed 11 cases per year. Since 2000, a total of 240 cases were filed. That's not very many. So those who think that we are going to incarcerate every homeless person in Kent is absolutely 100% wrong. We don't even have the ability to do that if we wanted to, and we absolutely don't want to. We understand that people are dealing with significant challenges, and they cannot, even if they wanted to, they're not able to control the effects of a drug that they're addicted to or their mental health issue. Fortunately, when somebody is charged in our court with any crime, they are given the opportunity for treatment. We try to connect them to treatment if they can't afford it. Our judges came here to talk to you about the community court a couple weeks ago. You are planning, assuming you adopt the budget, to invest more money in the community court. That will hopefully connect people to treatment if they want it. Again, they're not going to get that treatment unless they make the choice to get it. So our intent here is to, if somebody is ultimately arrested, to connect them with the services they need to get help, to get them out of this cycle of this situation. But I can promise you that before that ever happens, they will have chances to get into treatment. Our officers will tell you that in 100% of the cases, if somebody wants housing, shelter, they will find a shelter. And if they try to find a shelter and they can't find a shelter that's available to them, they are not going to arrest them. They'll come back the next day. They establish relationships with people. They know when new people come into our community. And they are very, very good and very, very compassionate in doing what they do. This will give them that extra tool that says, I've talked to you 4 times now. You're not self-helping, or you said you were going to get into treatment, you didn't. I offered to give you a ride, you wouldn't. I gave you a ride and you left before you went in the front door, because that happens. And this will give them that tool to give them that extra nudge. Next slide, please. Real quick, we have an internal task force of the city that's made up of Public Works, Parks, the mayor's office, economic community development, and we all meet on a monthly basis to talk about hotspots currently without this ordinance, and we try to get creative on how to deal with things. We direct resources to the areas where we think they're most needed, and that's a group that works on this. And we work collaboratively with each other. I can tell you that one of the best friends of the police department is Human Services, and their other best friend is Public Works, who takes care of managing garbage and then cleaning up camps. So we're a very tight-knit group, and we work under those circumstances now. Human Services, you've heard from them. They work regionally to create strategies related to homeless. They work with neighboring communities, and they provide our police staff with the support. We have somebody from Human Services, Christine, who goes out with our police officers when they go out to do camp enforcement to try to encourage people to get into housing, and they make the arrangement for people to come to help people get into housing. We also have our SOU department, grand total of 2 humans right now, 2 excellent police officers in that division. We once had 8. You know we have a staffing crisis, and we are staffing up. We have a lot of officers in the pipeline, and our hope is that by within the next year, we will have that fully staffed, and they will be more people to develop those relationships, develop that trust to get out there and encourage people to get into housing. And then, of course, we have the Public Works Department. They work in parallel with the Kent Police Department and Human Services on helping the actual physical cleanup of the areas. Next slide, please. Thank you. Camps, just real quick, we find camps through citizen complaints, parks observations, public works observations, and of course, police observations. Small camps can be cleaned up quickly without much big multi-department work, but larger camps and trends we address through the internal task force and get creative on how to deal with that. Next slide. So I'm going to hand it over now to our police department folks and human services folks to talk about what they do out on the street, and then when they're finished, we're going to play a video of some footage of them actually dealing with that situation. And then I'll come back for a few final comments, and then we'll have Christina come up and present the ordinance.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sergeant Kelso, Officer Chapman, and Christine. We're here to kind of talk to you about what a response to camping looks like. It's a pretty, we have it pretty laid out. It's a pretty common response each and every time. First time we make contact with a camp, it looks a lot alike. You know, it's kind of a form letter, if you will. I'm gonna have Officer Chapman kind of start off just kind of what that first engagement looks like, and then we'll kind of just walk through the process.
Yeah, so the first part of the engagement process is obviously the initial complaint or the observation. It can come many different ways, whether it's somebody calling 911, officers on patrol, property owners, business owners calling in and saying, hey, I'm seeing this issue, just want to make you aware of it. We also get complaints via phone and email, whether it's the see-click-fix thing, which goes to code enforcement and then gets routed to us, so we can help out with that. But regardless of how we get the complaint, a lot of the process after that is basically the same. First time we go out there, my goal is to get to know the person, whether it's, hey, I'm Officer Chapman, what's your name? Oh, Andy? Oh, hey, Andy, how's it going today? What's the issue? Eventually I want to find out what the barriers they're having, what's keeping them on the street, how I can essentially help them get to their next step, whether it be, hey, I need to get a driver's license. Hey, my car got stolen and I'm trying to get food. Perfect, let me help you out. Usually, a lot of it falls under education on, hey, camping is illegal in all of Kent. You can't be doing that here. Let's help you get someplace else. Here are some options for you. What are the barriers? What are you dealing with? How can I help you? Help me help you, sort of thing. And then, of course, offering resources, and depending on what the barriers are, whether it be a substance abuse or a mental health issue or something along those lines. So when it comes to providing resources, we have these resource cards that we have, these actual yellow ones right here. And we'll pass them around so you guys can see them. I think there's 37. Don't quote me on the number, but we have shelters, we have food, we have different resources depending on, again, what they need and what their issue is that they're trying to handle. A vast majority will accept the card, but rarely, at least in my experience, do they continue on and use the services that are open to them. But if they are open and willing to speak to other resources, I'm able to call up Christine or call up directly to Catholic Community Services, Union Gospel Mission, Salvation Army, explain, hey, I'm here with Andy, here's some of his issues, some of the barriers, can you help me out? Yep, I'll be there in half an hour. Sweet, perfect. I'm able to bring them out to the camps. I can stand by so it's safe, they can communicate, and it goes from there.
So, and one thing on the card, we kind of have a standard line. So on the front of that card, there's a big black box, and on the front of that is the City of Kent Human Services Department. I always like to explain to people, hey, if you're having problems or you don't know where to start or you're having problems connecting with someone, to give the folks in Human Services a call. I always make sure to tell people that it's kind of Monday through Friday, banker's hours thing. But that's a good place if they don't know where to start or they're running into roadblocks. Human Services is really good about getting back and kind of getting over those first hurdles.
That's it for that one.
Okay, good. So, as we go through the process, one of the things that we do is we post the camp. So we provide them with a 48-hour notice to remove property, and I can pass those down so you guys can take a look at those as well. Basically, it's a form letter. We fill in a few blocks, date, time, individual, that kind of stuff. And it basically lets them know that they have 48 hours to remove the property and get their belongings moved and move along. Now, with that said, the vast majority of the time, they're given more than 48 hours, and a lot of that is logistics. A lot of public works, parks, they don't even have the ability to get in and clean those things up in 48 hours. We have kind of amended the process a little bit, so there is in years past that has kind of drug out to a very long period of time, several weeks in some cases, and we don't want that because we don't want people that weren't in the camp the first time to move in and not know what's going on, right? So we try to keep it within a reasonable time, a week or so, to be able to get proper notification. We always tell people to focus in on their things that are important to them, their important belongings, their paperwork, medications, anything that they need, and then letting them know anything that they leave behind can be thrown away. If somebody's like, hey, I've got a plan, here's my plan, I'm making some improvements, we're happy to work with those folks and give them additional time and kind of facilitate some kind of an agreement where progress is being made, heading in the right direction, and they've given them a little bit of an extra time to get their camp cleaned up. One thing that's important to note, I think, is here tonight we're talking about unlawful camping, and it's going to be on public property, City of Kent property. I always tell folks that are in the camps, there's two kinds of property. There's private property and there's public property. If they're on private property and they don't have permission from the owner, that's criminal trespass. And if they're on public property, it's unlawful camping and they have to get their camps cleaned up. And then I explain a little bit about unlawful camping, and then we kind of go into the 48-hour notice to remove property. That way there's just not confusion as to them thinking they're on private property and when they're on public property, and or vice versa. So and one of the things that I think is unfortunate is when we're talking private property, which we're not really getting in here to tonight, but that property owner's kind of stuck with the bill for cleaning up, right? So they're kind of victimized as well, right? So damage to their property. We'll talk about some environmental damage stuff here in a little bit, but a lot of times if it's on a slope or something like that, they will cut in a little pad to put their tents up or their camp up, cut steps into the side of the hillside. Then along comes January and it all erodes away. So I think that's just something that's important to note. Okay.
So to add on to what Sergeant Kelso said, a lot of property crime has been associated with these homeless camps. Neighbors call and they report they're getting thefts from their porches, thefts from their vehicles, and increased trash, increased people on foot, people walking in the neighborhoods, whether it be a welfare check, calling on somebody. And the amount of calls that increase when encampment has been found, it only increases as time goes on and the camp grows. So it's the other slide. Thank you. Like Sergeant Kelso was saying, the damage to the natural environment is severe. We get stairs that are cut into steep slopes. We get flat pads that are cut into slopes and hills and the banks of the streams, which only draw more. It erodes the ground when the rains come in. When it gets cold, the erosion of the dirt, it's a mess and it's unsafe to be walking on. But excuse me. July and August of this year, we found and arrested a stabbing suspect in a homeless camp up on the West Hill. We see an increase in drug-related crimes, in sex offenses, both inside and outside of these encampments. Excuse me. And we know, like we've said already, we know we can't arrest our way out of this problem, and we don't want to try to do that. It's, like we've explained a couple of times, it's not a option that we think would work. But with the ordinance the way it is, we think this is another tool in our toolbox that essentially gives us another option in the form of criminal citations as well as an arrest if these situations dictate the need.
Good evening. I'm Christine, the Human Services Office, and my role in this, I work directly with these officers who oftentimes will contact me when they encounter folks in different situations. As I mentioned, we do work with several providers and outreach staff that have access to shelters, housing, treatment programs, and different types of services that these folks are desperately in need of. Union Gospel Mission, Catholic Community Services, Salvation Army, Vine Maple Place, Sound Mental Health, to mention a few of those. On larger encampments as they're identified, I work to assist in contacting those programs with outreach staff that can come with us on those engagements and talk directly with those residents. As you know, sometimes, oftentimes maybe, this uniform can be a bit of a barrier. So in those situations, I come as a non-uniformed representative of our Human Services Division, and I introduce myself. I'll shake their hand, I'll give them my card, and I'll mention that yellow card is much more than just information. It's a soft touch. It's an open door to a conversation where you have folks experiencing shame that may not be ready to have that first conversation. So it's a great opportunity for them to have that and access it when they're ready. The providers that come out with us, they are the specialists in the services that are available. They will work with each individual. I'll hand off to them, and they will talk to them, interview them, do that casework on the spot. And if that person or people are willing to engage in services, they will do what they have to do to triage them to what is available. They never come empty-handed, and work with them from there. And we recognize that not all services aren't one size fits all. So that's why we work with so many of these providers, some of which are funded providers, some of them are not. They're all our partners in this community, recognizing one common need, and that's that we need help for these folks. So triaging them and even transporting them as needed, we also use this opportunity to better understand and gain insight on the needs of our community members that are experiencing homelessness. It's an opportunity for us to learn what do they need, how can we better serve them, and keep our community safe. So that was about.
We're going to play a short video of a contact that they had a while back, and then we'll finish up that part, and we'll have Christina come in.
How's it going, Lori? What's going to be video recording? So we got UGM down here as well as Salvation Army. A couple of the resources I said I'd be bringing out to you out here. Okay, so you want me to see if they can drive you up there?
Yeah.
Start with that, and then
we'll see where we go.
Work on this room stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go chat with them, see if they guys were cool with taking you guys up there.
Okay.
If they are, how long do you think it would take to get what is in disarray in array?
Not that much.
Like an hour or two.
I don't even think that, because I don't know where any...
Give them an hour or 2, 3, so that way you're not feeling rushed.
But then I have to have them come back again.
That's
And well, you were saying 12 o'clock, so that's why I scheduled having them and UGM and Salvation Army and... Okay. I'm just saying, because then I got to tell them to come back.
Well, no, I mean, it's not noon yet, right?
Well, no, but it's in 20 minutes, and believe me, I'm not trying to. I just don't want to have them hang around for 3 hours. You know what I mean?
No. We'll just.
Or I can have them come down and chat and see if you guys can figure out timing.
Or whatever works. If it means we just go and figure out and get a ride to come get whatever. I don't know. Whatever works right now. I'm at my very end right now.
Well, not the very end.
Close.
Nope. Journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, you know.
All right.
What's that? The
encouragement.
Chinese proverb, fall down 7 times, stand up 8?
Yeah. No.
There you go. Be the change you want to see in the world. I got these for days. Okay?
I'm working.
I'll be right back. You like that?
I like that.
Yeah? See? I try.
And you're a good talker.
Quick-witted. Why, thank you. I appreciate it. You should tell my boss. Okay. Huh?
What are you listening?
Yeah, well, that's another story. So apparently their car got hit and stolen last night. I'm like, well, I can get you a ride. Like, that's not the issue.
Load them up right now.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, how much time do you need to get all your stuff? And they're like, well, apparently there was stuff in the car and there's stuff that's all in different areas. I'm like, how long in order to get your stuff and go? Because I'm sure I could talk to them, sweet talk them. They're already here. Yep. And the son's like, oh, probably 1, 2, 3 hours. I'm like, hey, you guys said 12. I called out all these favors. I don't want to have them wait for 3 hours because, one, I'm not going to ask them to do that, and it's not really convenient timing. How much space do you think we have to put stuff in if you guys are able to drive her up there?
3 rows.
3 rows? Okay. Would you guys mind going down there and explaining to her how much space we have? Because when I tell her 3 rows,
You guys got candy?
you know what I mean? So we gave them drinks and stuff and talked to Son. They're all on board with heading out. Their car got stolen, so we're going to give them a ride at 1 once they're all packed. Yeah. I was worried that was going to be an excuse. I'm like, nope, I will put you in a car. I will call a cab. I will walk you myself.
God.
So, but we got to hit something else before we come back at 1. I don't know if you guys are planning to hang out that long.
We probably will.
Okay.
Probably just
You're the
hang
best.
out with her and just let her know that I'm here to support her.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was concerned about, she thought the director of the Vine was coming down. I'm like, I don't know about that. I thought somebody was, but I'm like, I don't know if that's happening. Either way, we can still get you up there, regardless of car or not. That's not the issue. And then she was talking about how long the intake takes, and I'm like, I don't know. I would assume it's
going to take
similar.
a couple hours.
Okay. I hate to be like, oh, it's going to be this long. Oh, that's too long. Well, I don't know the exact answer, but if that's the thing that gets you on the line.
Right.
So.
Right.
I appreciate you coming.
No problem.
Probably saved the day. Gold star.
Hopefully.
I would hold him. I would hand him out if I had it. But yeah, we'll be back in about an hour.
Okay.
So if you need anything,
I'll stay here so she doesn't go.
You're the best.
I'll call you if I need to.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
So that is a good example of the professional approach that our employees take when dealing with these situations. The follow-up to this, the children in that video are still in shelter, and the female is not. She left shelter. So, and that's a very predictable outcome, and hopefully next time she'll take shelter and maybe she'll stay in shelter. So. All right, so the proposed ordinance, as I noted, it will replace our existing ordinance. We're shifting it to focus on environmental damage, to ensuring Kent's improved spaces that this city is invested in remain available for their intended use, and address conflicts in intended use in favor of the intended use and the investment. Shelter will be offered in every single case. And if somebody accepts shelter, they are not in jeopardy of being charged or arrested. And as noted, charges would be used only as a last result. Finally, almost finally, I want to make sure the public understands you're not going to see change overnight. This is a big problem. And as I noted, we have a very, I don't want to do the math, but, you know, much less than half the staff, a quarter of the staff, I think I did the math, a quarter of the staff that we had in the past. We are recovering from low staffing levels in our police department, and it will take time for people to come on board. As people to come on board, we aren't going to just see a whole bunch more people getting arrested. What you're going to see is many more contacts, many more opportunities, a lot more urging, and a lot more pushing. And that's what we intend to use this for. In the interim, the Human Services Department is recommending doubling its investment in Catholic Community Services Engagement Center, which should increase in opportunities for individuals to get services and case management that they need. And so now, without further ado, I'm going to ask Christina, our Deputy City Attorney, to come up and talk to you about the ordinance that we have for you. And after that, we'll just open it up to questions and try to figure out the best person available to answer the question for you. So thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Christina Shook, Deputy City Attorney, and for my part, I'm going to walk you through the ordinance so you can see how some of the issues we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes translate into the ordinance that's before you. So a quick overview, I just want to talk about the differences between, it's a repeal and replace, so that means you're repealing the entire chapter and replacing it with a new chapter. A quick overview of the differences, so the definitions have been updated. There's more details within the ordinance and how encampments are addressed and removed. You'll see a section that prohibits activities related to what is causing specific environmental damage. And then it updates how and where the camping provisions are enforced. So first, let's talk about that enforcement, the enforcement provisions. So generally, camping is prohibited in public places throughout the city. That's not a change. As you heard Pat say, we've had this ordinance on the book since about 2000, I believe. So these general provisions are not enforced when there is no available shelter. So if there's no available shelter, enforcement is suspended in these general areas. So this suspension it also applies to the storage of camping facilities. So you're going to see this in your ordinance at 809030B, and this is to comply with the ruling in the Martin v. Boyce case. So another significant and important change to enforcement is the specification of locations in which camping provisions can be enforced at all times. This means regardless of the availability of shelter. So enforcement in these targeted locations, where these specific locations were identified based upon the locations in which they cause the most harm and disruption. And so you'll find these in 809030A, and they're divided into three categories. So first you'll see, again, a specific area where this can be enforced at all times are portions of parks that are developed for particular purposes. For example, picnic shelters, designated trails, playfields that are actively used for a designated purpose. That's one category. The second category is environmentally sensitive and naturally important areas. You've seen a lot about this tonight on the environmental impacts. So these are the sensitive areas, critical areas they're defined as. This includes wetlands, steep slopes, river banks, and it also includes watershed properties, and these, of course, are vital to the protection of the city's water source. The third category is city-owned buildings, and these are buildings that must be available for staff to report to work and for the public to conduct business. So again, in these designated areas, the prohibition on camping can be enforced at any time. So in addition to camping, a big change of this ordinance, and you'll see this in 809060, is the prohibition of related harmful activities. And these are activities that cause a lot of environmental damage. And you'll see that they include starting fires, littering, discharging waste, destroying vegetation, creating trails, and I think we heard steps in the steep slopes, diverting streams, and disturbing wildlife habitat. So those provisions, again, are set forth in 060. And then next, this also is specific on how encampments are addressed and removed. So again, we have the two categories. There's the general Outside of the specific locations that we discussed, the encampments are posted, as you heard the police tell you. There isn't a change to that. The ordinance is based on this SOPs, the standard operating procedures that were already in place. But then in the specified areas, again, the parks for designated purpose, the environmentally sensitive, and the city-owned buildings, the encampments can be removed right away, and this is to limit the disruption and the damage. However, as you've heard a few times, individuals in both categories and both situations are always provided an opportunity to remove their property or ask for it to be stored, and they are also offered assistance to seek alternative shelter and offered services. So, and finally, in the rare event a citation is used as a tool within the situations we've been discussing, the enforcement section of this ordinance, which is found in 080B, the very last section, this leaves room for the individual to seek help, and it shows the city will support this help. So, for example, you'll see in that section, the city will agree to what's called a deferred sentence if an individual is seeking maybe mental health assistance or assistance with substance use disorder. So with that, we're available to answer any of your questions.
Okay. First, I'd like to say thanks to the staff and the team for a great presentation. I think you guys really did a good job, excellent job, presenting your data to us around this ordinance here. I do have a couple of questions from my council member. I just want to kind of throw some things out here. I think, public safety, we all believe is crucial to the city, to our citizens. I think, we all want to make sure that we are safe no matter where we go within the city of Kent. And I think, to me, that's probably the most important thing. And I really like the part where we talk about compassion, right? I think because there's people out there who don't want to be in the street, or don't want to be out in the camping zone. And I think the officer did an excellent job really showing compassion and working with people and trying to make sure we point them in the right direction for where to go and to get help. And I think also when we talk about investment, we as a councilman, we have invested a lot of money in our parks and in our environment, and that kind of goes against what we're doing. And I strongly believe we can do both. I believe that we can continue investing into our environment, our parks and so on, and also really trying to help those that need help and point them in the right direction. I do have just one question I'm going to go to my council member. So you mentioned that if we don't have shelter for them to go, I think I heard you say, are we just going to leave them there, or what happened? And can they just give me an example when we don't have places for them to go?
Yeah, I think, so the idea is if in certain areas, if we don't have a place for them to go, we still can technically file a charge. But we are committed to doing everything we can to finding shelter. And if somebody has a sincere or wants to and has a sincere or makes a sincere effort to get into shelter or to be in shelter, eventually our officers aren't going to file charges. They're going to use their discretion, just like they do in every single crime in the state of Washington. They have discretion on whether to enforce it. And we need to rely on our officers who deal with this issue on a daily basis to be able to exercise the discretion to know whether or not this person is being sincere in their desire for shelter. I can tell you that our officers establish relationships with people out there. So they know, they come across these people multiple times usually. And if they come across somebody new and they have not developed a relationship, they're not just going to drop the hammer on them. That's not how this is going to work. But they do need that discretion. Because if they don't have that discretion, we have an empty threat. And sometimes we need to have that tool to push them into that situation. So our law is really clear. In certain circumstances, we don't have to offer you shelter. But I can tell you that our practice is to do that. And when we have a sincere willingness to accept it, we will make sure that that's the route we go.
Okay. I think the last comment, really, I think it's all our responsibility to be able to provide for those who are less fortunate, right? And also, I think it's our job to be able to speak on their behalf, right? So I think as we move forward, it's something we want to continue to keep in mind. With that said, I'm going to start with Councilmember Thomas, followed by Troutner.
Thank you, Mr. President. You've given us some good reasons, Pat, to support this ordinance, but I can think of one that really wasn't mentioned here, and that's rats. Rats. I hate rats, but I've been out to these camps, I've been to the trail, I've been down to the river, and the one thing that I see, and I don't think it's really a food supply for the homeless. So that just bugs me. That's a health issue to me. They carry disease and all kinds of things. So that was one. Number two, I was really pleased, and I talked to the mayor this afternoon about it, because when I first read this ordinance, I'm going, oh, great. Here's another ordinance, just like fireworks, that puts some stuff on the books, but no enforcement. And that was my first impression. And I confronted her with that, and she put me at ease because there is enforcement. The follow-up, the process that you talked about, the officers talked about, I really appreciate that, because to have an ordinance without teeth is worthless. And then we're just spinning our wheels up here. So thank you.
Thank you, Council President. First of all, I want to thank all of our departments that have put in the time and the effort to keep our community safe and keep our city clean. But as you saw in the video, we also have those encounters with people that we're trying to help with that first step and doing it with compassion. So thank you to everyone that helps out with that. My question is, currently, I believe business owners, if someone is on your property or in your doorway, camped out or set up space, it is the responsibility of the business owner to trespass that individual. Does this ordinance give us the opportunity to have our officers do that, or does that still come back to the business owner that will have to trespass if someone is in their doorway or on their sidewalk?
No, the only person who can trespass an individual from property is the person who controls the property. So we can't self-police that. We have to be given authority to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Larmer, followed by Michelle.
Thank you. Pat, question. Well, first, I want to also thank the staff for all the work they've done in this area for years. I know I went out to the camps with the PD and support services, I think way back in 2019, and was seeing a lot of this firsthand. And I do believe on that visit we did get a couple into services, so that was really rewarding. Where I'm struggling, I think, is similar to Councilmember Thomas. My first reaction was, is this just putting something on the books that's not going to be enforceable, and we're setting an expectation in the community that suddenly we have a tool to do something. But, as Councilmember Troutner pointed out, there's a difference when it comes to private property versus public property. And I'm still a little unclear, and I'd like a little bit more clarity on, in the situation, if you were to go out today with the ordinance as it is written today, how that engagement and interaction would be as written today, and then with the changes. I guess I'm still trying to understand the difference between the repeal and replace.
Sure.
And what this tool for further action we're creating really is.
Right. So one of the challenges, we have a couple prosecutors in the audience. They'll cringe when I talk about this, but we have some vagueness problems with our ordinance. Our current ordinance is so broad that it captures conduct that we have no intention of capturing because of the way it was defined. And that's what happens when you have an ordinance that's 20 years old. You over time go through cases and litigate it in the criminal courts and deal with cases and apply the facts of the cases, and you find that, well, maybe somebody who's on a blanket at Lake Meridian getting a suntan might be considered a camper if you read our definitions too strictly or something like that. So what we wanted to do is narrow the scope. We also really narrowed the scope of camp paraphernalia was a concept we have in our old ordinance, and I think that's completely gone. It's gone. And we're talking about the permanent damage more to the environment and the facilities that we have. Those are the main things. There were so many minor tweaks that we made that if we did this with strike through and underline like we do when we amend a lot of ordinances, you would have probably gone crazy trying to figure out what it said. So that's why for the repeal and replace. And it really focuses on the concept that there is a lot of damage being done to the facilities that you all have invested in. And it's really focusing more on the effects of the action than the action itself. And that's really what this shift is. It's kind of a fundamental shift in that way. And when we wrote our ordinance, we modeled it after other agencies. And recently, a lot of agencies have been amending their ordinances to fine tune them. And this is a question that you often ask, Council President. What are other cities doing, right? That's one of your favorite questions. And so I did a quick look, and I can tell you, Algona has a no camping in parks. Auburn, Bellevue, no camping in public property. Covington Parks, Des Moines Parks, Federal Way, no camping in public property. Issaquah, Maple Valley, same thing. Interestingly enough, under state law, no camping is allowed in state parks that allow camping. They limit the time, and once you exceed that time, you're considered camping, and it is unlawful, and it's to address this particular issue. So even a campground has an ordinance that prevents somebody from establishing a living space in the campground. So we had to fine tune our ordinance to make it a more effective tool for the folks who deal with this situation on a daily basis.
I too want to thank staff and Pat as well for the presentation. My question is for the SOU team and Christine. I'm wondering how often people do take services, and then also how often is some sort of shelter not available?
Sorry, could you?
Yeah, I was about to say, repeat your question, yeah.
Couldn't hear it at the time.
So the first question is, how often do people take services? And the second part is, how often is shelter unavailable?
So the first question is almost counterintuitive. People virtually never take shelter. The video that you watched, I think we visited those folks 3 different times prior to, I was actually on vacation, but Officer Chapman was finally able to kind of convince her that it was in her and the children's best interest for them to take shelter. I think a lot of that is due to addiction that we talked about at the very beginning. The draw to drugs is stronger than the draw to be housed. So I would say we are probably well into the 90th percentile where people refuse shelter. And then I don't believe, since my time, which has been December of last year, we've never had a time where we were not able to shelter somebody. We have always been able to find a way to get somebody sheltered. So Christine would be able to speak on that part specifically.
I'll just add to some of the reasons that folks decline shelter or other services. Shame, fear, the unknown are big parts of it. And I can't speak to this, but a lot of our outreach workers can. They have that actual lived experience and have been in that position. They know what addiction is like. They're living in recovery, and they know the process is not pretty. It's painful. It's physically, mentally, emotionally painful, and oftentimes not even successful the first few times someone tries. So that is a big part of it. A lot of these folks have tried to kick a habit or get that treatment and haven't been able to successfully do it, and are so ashamed, dehumanized, that they choose not to access those services for some of those reasons.
Okay. Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you, Council President. I work downtown here too, so we're just a couple of blocks away from here. So where I am, we also experience the same things. In fact, all of us live in Kent. All of us experience the same things that the residents and the businesses do. one of my concerns is for the businesses and the residences is will we see more people on their lawns or in their driveways and entryways. Also, we know that there are people who are not going to come in. They're not going to come in no matter what we offer, but we know that there's people who also will. And I think this is a good time to also mention that there still is a need for shelter. Christine had mentioned that there's not one size fits all in shelters. There's as many people out there who are homeless and the reasons they're homeless as there are some who have drug and addiction problems, some who don't. So we need to also look at those. Those are probably not the ones who are going to be hanging out, camping in the park, but I don't know. They're going to be somewhere. We're going to be heading into the winter again. I think that it's a good time for us to look at maybe using SCA or Sound Cities Association or some way to help convince King County that there is a need for more shelter here in the region, in the city and in the region, since it's not just us. We have funding, and I'm glad to see the recommendation to double that funding to CCS, but still they're only open 4 days a week out of 7, and they close at 4 o'clock. So again, people are still out in the evening time. So I think it's important that we look at places. Vancouver, Washington has done some good things to help with their safe parking lots, their tiny home villages, some good things to help get people off and on the road through support to a better station in life. So I think it's important that we remember not only that, and we definitely have a compassionate staff. I know, some of our police officers who have bought phones because oftentimes you need a phone so that you can get housing. They've bought meals. They've helped supply, after they get people in an apartment, getting them things for the apartment. So I know there's a lot of compassion throughout our city and our staff, and I'm grateful for that. But there's still some more that I think we can propel the county maybe, because as I said, we're going in for cold weather now. It's been a year already with the CCS shelter. I'm told it's at least another year before that's going to be ready. There is a shortage of beds, and remembering that there are different kinds of beds. Some are only for recovery, some are only for mental health. You have to fit into a category, so we need to actually look and help those people still. I think we can do more from the city to help people. So I just wanted to add that part. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fincher. Councilman Lumber, you still? Okay, please.
Yeah, I have another question or comment. I want to kind of address some of the emails that we've received all day, in the past few days. And there's, a lot of the housing advocates are concerned about the displacing folks that are simply can't afford housing. I mean, regionally, we have a housing crisis, no doubt about that. Could you guys address perhaps how often you see where there's no substance abuse, there's no mental disorder, it's just purely, I lost my apartment, I can't afford housing?
Yeah, it's a true and honest assessment that there are those people out there. Those are the people who access these kind of services, and they work through the process, and then they get back up on their feet. And we as the police don't deal with them hardly ever. Generally speaking, there are folks that maybe went through a really bad divorce, lost their job, whatever, just had a really bad run of luck, and they're living in their car for a few weeks. And then they get into some program, get some stability, and then and kind of get back on their feet. The folks that we deal with on a day-to-day basis aren't those folks. Those are the folks that we love to run across, although it's exceptionally rare. We love to run across those people because those are the ones that make you feel good because you get to help somebody out. So,
okay, yeah. But it's exceedingly rare that is who we're talking about in these public places. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Thomas, are you still? Please.
Just a quick.
Yep.
Christina, this is going probably to in 2 weeks to the
operate. Yeah.
Yeah. So is it 30 days after that it takes effect? You're not the attorney anymore. I'm asking Christina. I did that on purpose. lastly, to the public, I'm going to take some freedom here. TJ, can you hold up with one hand how many people you've known have been murdered in the camps? 5. Okay, thank you very much. No, don't talk. 5's enough.
No, it wasn't 5.
Huh? Was it 5?
No.
Personally, at least 4 people that have been murdered in camps, 2 people here in Kent.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President. That's all.
Okay. Councilman Fincher?
I had a question. So you come, I'm sleeping in the camp, I'm camping in the park. You come and tell me to move, and I move. Am I cited?
Absolutely not. Nope.
So then that's not going to impact my employment or?
Nope, not at all.
Yeah. I do want one other comment. And Councilman Fincher, you mentioned something about the King County and the county helping out. I know they have purchased numerous of property and houses over the last year or so. So I think us finding a way to connect with that, I think that'll be very positive. They have purchased numerous of property over the years, so that'd be definitely an opportunity for us. The other point that Councilman Fincher talked about, so if we get them out of the wood, per se, and they come into the street or in front of the business, I mean, have we thought about that? I mean, if you push that out, Pat, somebody? So they're in the camp, right? So decided we push them out, right? Then decided where we're going to go on First Avenue or park in front of the business. I mean,
That's a situation that it's a common.
Yep.
It's common. It's common in every city that has this type of ordinance.
Okay.
And the important thing is, every time there's a contact, our police department is further establishing that relationship. And at some point, the hope is that they will bite and take a shot at housing.
I just didn't want us to get in a whack-a-mole business, right? You know, from one spot to the other, right? I mean, I don't mean to sound negative, but I just want to make sure that we are taking all those things into consideration.
Yep.
Okay. Councilman Lummer?
Yeah, just one follow-up question on that. So just help me understand again, if you were talking about multiple contacts if they're pushed out into the street. So how do we focus on the private property piece? So if we force them out of public lands and we start having a larger issue on our private properties.
Well, we'll face that if we have to.
Okay.
The thing about private property is the property owner controls what happens on the property. And if they give our police department authority to act, our police department can act immediately. And that's how it is now.
Okay.
In any circumstance, whether you're dealing with somebody at a business and the business owner doesn't want them there, they can trespass them immediately. And once that happens, our police department has authority to take action if they need to. But again, depending on what they're dealing with, our police officers, every police officer in the state of Washington and the country uses a tremendous amount of discretion. And the police officers in our city who work in this area, they know that developing relationships is the only way they're going to make headway with people they come across. And so, as you can see, they're pretty darn good at it. And they'll do that whether it's public property or private property.
And I think on private property, it is trespassing, right?
It's trespassing.
Automatic
yes.
trespassing on
Absolutely.
private property.
So they have the authority to cite.
Yep.
But I can tell you that if somebody agrees to get up and walk away, chances are they're not going to cite them. If they come back and they find them again, chances are they are going to cite issue. So,
thank you, Councilman Michaud, please.
Thank you, Council President. So my question is similar because a lot of the complaints we get are from business owners. So I'm wondering, how is this ordinance going to help business owners, and what happens with the trespass? What is the trespass process?
So most of our business owners, I think, are already participating in the trespass program. So if there's somebody on their property, they can give our police officers authority to go there and remove people from the property, even if the owner isn't there. That's pursuant to a trespass agreement. And a lot of our business owners already have trespass agreements. But how this affects them, it's hard to say. If we, it really is hard to say. We deal with trends constantly. People move around. I think what we're seeing at this point in this region is that people are getting very comfortable not following any semblance of rules. And that is what is resulting in our parks being utilized in a way that prevents other utilization. So it's a hard question to answer. You can see I'm kind of moving around the outside of it because I don't have a clear answer. We can't arrest our way out of every problem. There are significant issues in this region that we're dealing with, and a lot of them deal with drug addiction. I think those are overarching problems that contribute to this problem and a lot of the problems that our business community faces right now.
Chief, do you want to say something?
I was trying to not.
But
so our entire crew here is doing a great job. It's a great question on the businesses. I want to add that when we have camps in our nearby locations that are adjacent to businesses, there is a direct impact. And I think every business owner here would agree to that. So if we can help get resources and address the camps that are, say, behind Lowe's or behind Fred Meyer's, or name the location that's having an impact, it improves the ability for businesses to operate and not have this issue to some degree. So there is a direct impact, because we've talked about in prior public safety reports about if you took the location to where we're having some hotspot policing issues in terms of crime and whatnot, and overlaid that with where the location of our camps are, they match. There's a direct correlation there. So helping to reduce and address the camps will have an immediate impact directly on our businesses.
Hey, Councilman Lumber, you still lit up?
Last question.
No, that's fine. That's why we're here. Nope.
Are you still lit up?
Sorry, I hear questions, then I have
That's
more.
good.
So for the business owners, where's that line between a public sidewalk and the business owner property? Is it a doorway? Like, where do sidewalks come into this when you see?
$1 million question.
Okay.
We often have to rely on Public Works to delineate a line for us. We've had to do that with Kent Station in the past. Like, where is the line between Kent Station-owned property and public property? It depends on the area.
Okay.
Every area is a little different.
So you can't say like sidewalks are public.
Well, sidewalks generally are, but we don't have clear delineation sometimes where the sidewalk starts and the sidewalk ends. And when we have a question, we will contact Chad's group, and GIS will get on it and figure it out for us.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
It's okay. Hey, the last comment I'm going to make, as we go forward, beside to move this forward, I want at least the team start thinking about just how we go about collecting data, right? You know, all types of data to see how this ordinance is working, how many people we're actually moving forward. I'm assuming that'll be a possible way to be able to do that, and maybe the chief can make that part of his police report. Okay? With that said, I think the council members all do. I'm going to ask for a motion, please. Councilmember Thomas.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And a great discussion, everybody. That was wonderful. So, in light of that, I move to adopt ordinance number 4443, repealing chapters 8.09 of the Kent City Code and replacing it with a new chapter which prohibits activities that cause environmental damage and harm public property, including unlawful camping, storing of personal property, and unlawful fires, and setting forth the circumstances under which unlawful camping is enforced.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I actually would like to move that we move this forward, but we put it on other business. I feel like I'd still like an opportunity to hear from the public, and we have not had public comment on it.
And that will be the plan on October 18th. We will have it on other business, and there'll be other discussion. Thank you so much. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. And once again, thank you, team. Really appreciate it. And I think the key really, we will show compassion, right, as we move forward this year and make sure that people are pointing in the right direction. So, thank you. We are adjourned right now. Have a good day.